There aren't many games such as Thief. Some may argue that it single-handedly introduced an entire new genre, and while that could be debatable, Thief is without a doubt responsible for introducing some of the most crucial and atmospheric elements in a video game. Thief uses sound design and environmental awareness as a tool like no other game, and while most of them rely heavily on visuals to emphasize and use stealth, Thief was truly ahead of its time with a recipe that created an immersive experience which brought a new standard to the whole stealth genre. And while that recipe got overshadowed due to the implementation of other games' cheap mechanics, such as seeing through walls and fast-paced action, I feel it still holds up even for today's standards.
It's not much, but it's home.
The standard to portray an immersive experience that begs minimal hand-holding, an intriguing story, and a gameplay that outshines with its unique level design. On the 1st of December 1998, Thief the Dark Project was first released in North America and made its way to Europe shortly after. The Dark Project and its sequel, The Metal Age, were developed by Looking Glass Studios and published by Eidos Interactive. After Looking Glass Studios dissolved, Ironstorm stepped in and secured its rights for the Thief franchise, thus starting their work on the third and last game in the series, Thief Deadly Shadows. There's also a Thief reboot that came out in 2014, but that one has nothing to do with the original Thief series, and to be fair, it could be considered an entirely different game, which only shares the protagonist's name and occupation. Surely there's other bits and pieces that scarcely reference the original Thief series, but in my opinion, it kind of failed at delivering an authentic Thief experience. With the massive video game influence and demand of the early 2000s, I feel like Thief Deadly Shadows is often portrayed as one of the weaklings from the original Thief series, which is unfortunate because I believe Deadly Shadows does have more to offer in terms of story, atmosphere, and overall gameplay than its two predecessors. And that's not because of the graphics or mechanical limitations, but more because of its excellent way of keeping you immersed and on edge. It still has the same amazing composer and most of the talented voice actors. It has the same art style and attention to detail, and most of all, the same mysterious and immersive level design. And that's because most of the people that were involved in creating the two Thief games were still there, working on the third one. In 2004, when the market started flooding with games, there was some competition with games like Splinter Cell, Metal Gear, and even Hitman. Although they're very different from Thief, these games were slowly starting to focus primarily on consoles, and Thief Deadly Shadows wasn't going to be left out. On 25th May 2004, Deadly Shadows was released on Xbox and PC, and most of the fans were not very happy. People were complaining about the lack of a dedicated first-person perspective, no more debriefing and cutscenes, and overall, for lack of a better term, a bit too video gamey. But why not show Garrett? Why not have two options to switch between first person and third person? Why not change and improve some of the elements from the first two games? Why not add a bit more depth to its gameplay and atmosphere? Surely the Dark Project and Metal Age had their technical limitations, which made it creepy and immersive, but Deadly Shadows doesn't need to be another clone of its predecessors. It deserves an improvement while still retaining its mysterious and gloomy atmosphere, with the same witty protagonist and the same threats and challenges from the first two games. And that's exactly what it does. It offers an immersive experience alongside an impressively written story, and while it's not a perfect game, it surely is without a doubt one of the best stealth games ever.
Waiting. Don't rush me! I'm about to go!
Listen, it's not that hard. Look, you're showing pelicans and mackerels, right? Just play them in order and you'll have at least two. Oh, Burricks.
What? What's wrong?
You just won. I just won for you.
Ha ha! Pay up, Mortimer! What did I win?
In the world of Thief, all the major events gather around three powerful factions that are known as the Pagans, Hammerites, and Keepers. These factions have their own set of ideologies, ethics, and beliefs. Some of them believe in demons.
Diane, priestess of wood, give hers enchantment and beset them minds.
Yes?
Then the man fools, thinker they be's acting of them own free will, does whatever we wants.
While others in heroes and soldiers.
'Tis the holy day of Saint Edgar. Doth it surprise you? 'Twould be a greater shame to stand missing.
but some of them simply want to preserve balance.
Balance to you.
We have two opposite poles and one dividing line that keeps them from uniting together. But which side is Garrett on? He's been trained by the keepers and held by both the Hammerites and the pagans, but somehow he never grew fond of any of them. I wonder why. I think because clearly everyone knows that Garrett is skilled. He even acknowledges this himself.
All right, Hag. Let's find out who the real thief is.
But truly, he works alone. He never really fits in any of these factions, and he was never a big fan of 9-to-5s either. So he relies on his survival demeanor and makes a living out of theft. And I'm not talking about petty theft. I'm talking about one-of-a-kind, high-profile collectibles.
So this is what they all wanted. Well, it's better off with me.
But what about the area? The city is more of a concept than an actual city. It's the main action point in all the thief games. Although the city is ungoverned, we only know that it's run by a baron that has a firm grip on all the taxes, guards, and laws. But as we often see, power doesn't always rely on wealth. It could be other things too. For example, the pagans think they're nature's chosen ones. But in reality, they're a group of people who worship a trickster god that wishes total annihilation over everyone else who's not in line with his ideologies. Most people fear them and stay away from their districts. They often form secluded corners and live in the underbelly parts of town, mostly because they try to avoid those Hammerite fanatics. Which brings us to the Hammerites, who are obsessive fanatics that praise a deity called the Builder. This group sits at the opposite pole from their counterpart. Instead of being technologically inept, they embrace it and innovate through their sturdy constructions and ingenious mechanical inventions. They're responsible for creating most of the major structures in the city, such as the Clocktower and the Ironwood Keep. But at the top of them all, there's the Order of the Keepers. They're a large community with a focus on glyph magic and the idea to preserve balance throughout the city. They're responsible for overcoming and interpreting the Dark Age prophecies, which could prove cataclysmic, like in the Dark Project and the Metal Age. So far, with the help of Garrett, they've overcome all these prophecies that would have otherwise wiped out everyone. And last but not least, we have Garrett, a master thief whose skill set is recognized and praised throughout the city. Everyone recognizes him as a living legend, and some of them even impersonate him to gain profit and fame.
Is that you, Garrett?
Yeah, that's right. I'm Garrett, Master Thief at your service. McFarley said you had a job for me. Brent, is it?
Indeed I do.
What? What's wrong?
Nothing. I just thought you looked different, that's all.
But mostly, they reach out to him if they want a job well done.
We need you to acquire them for us. You mean steal them?
Garrett's wanted posters scatter throughout the entire town, so he only goes out at night because he isn't a warrior to fight guards in broad daylight. He doesn't murder or get into fights, but instead he relies on his evasion tactics to make himself unnoticed. His personality is witty and sharp, and overall someone that looks after himself. That's his way to survive. His upbringing wasn't very fortunate either, and over the years, it didn't really get any better. So far, he managed to lose an eye and a lot of interest towards any community, which is why he works alone and tries to not get involved with anyone else, especially not with any of the keepers. That's about to change because he's not fully convinced that the keepers are entirely useless, so he decides to find out what sort of secrets they're willing to unveil. In the South Quarter lies Garrett's home and overall training grounds. Each and every district has a fence, which is someone who provides Garrett with different opportunities. Most of these opportunities come in the form of rumors, while some are actually precise indications with a map that shows a scarce layout of the place. These maps can also be pretty useful, but I've always felt like they're more of an idea to keep you on the right track rather than tell you exactly where to go. This time, Garrett had a lead that was kindly offered by Heartless Perry. The gig's about a nobleman named Lord Julian, one of the most wealthy people in South Quarter. Garrett knew he wasn't a small fry, so he opened up his eyes for a velvet bag that seemed to never leave the old man's sight. Nobody knows exactly how Perry got this tip, but Garrett was more than happy to go ahead and snatch it. Sharing this information with Garrett means good business for him too, since he does such a great job at delivering quality items. It's a chain reaction amongst the black market fences, which creates a very prosperous ecosystem that enables these people to live a better life. Look at all these places. There's so many of these fences, it's impossible not to get curious. I wonder if any of these guards ever come and question any of these honest merchants. Usually, in every quarter marked with a red palm, there's a buyer and a seller. Some of them only buy jewelry, while others are okay with paintings and gems. I guess that's the only reason why Garrett would swoop from district to district instead of selling everything in one place. This is common with buying items, and while some are mandatory for game progression, most of the great stuff can be found in almost every shop with some moderation. For example, Garrett cannot carry more than 5 gas arrows at once, or more than 15 flash bombs. I guess this gives him a reason to actually loot more during a mission, so that later on he can have more tools to rely on if he gets in trouble.
I got a tip last night from my fence. Heartless Perry. A nobleman named Lord Julian had some sort of quarrel and showed up at a local inn well after nightfall and in a foul mood.
The location of Lord Julian is certain. He's staying at the Blue Heron Inn, which is also categorized as a hotel. We learned this by both the layout of the map and the environment itself. I'm saying this because nobody really tells us this information, and Thief is not the type of game to let us know through a pop-up or dialogue box. Instead, the surrounding area originally tells us everything we should know without the need of any presentation. Garrett sneaks into a cellar and makes his way into the reception. Upon having a closer glance at the guest list, it shows Lord Julian at the very top of the list. His room of choice isn't a coincidence, as choosing a piney suit somewhat shows a level of sophistication. This is immediately noticed by Garrett, and he remarks it quite well.
Lord Julian. Wouldn't do to have anyone think he was just Julian.
In Lord Julian's suit, there's a note from a cook, who asks him to meet up in the Lancaster room. Garrett then overhears them plotting to steal the Bloodline Opal, and takes the opportunity to steal the mysterious velvet bag.
My lord, 5 picked men with me, and we cut our way through.
He's your cousin, my lord.
I won the bet. My shaft was closer by a thumb's width. The Bloodline Opal should rightfully be mine.
This opal is not just any ordinary jewelry, it's a family heirloom which has been passed on from generation to generation, to which Lord Julian wasn't essentially entitled to, but instead he won it by beating his cousin, Lord Ember, in an archery contest. However, upon losing, Lord Ember didn't budge and decided to keep it for himself. Ember knows what type of person Lord Julian is, which is why he locks the opal safely into a vault. This dispute between cousins shines a new path for Garrett that kicks off the beginning of a very profitable journey.
Close one, but I've still got the goods.
They doubled the watch.
This castle's as old as South Quarter. See the way the stone is? Pulled off an army. Probably has.
You really think so?
And who knows? It's an old part of town. Streets are all different here, not like Aldale or Stone Market.
What do you know about it?
I could have been in the city watch, I knew it that well. I could find my way around blind.
Bet you've seen things.
You wouldn't believe it. Saw a rat once as big as a dog. I saw a man, dead in the street, without his skin.
Come on, who'd take somebody's skin?
Could be... Nah, I won't say it. Nobody knows the whole city. How old it is, how many times it's been built over. Not the Hammerites, nobody.
Tackling a huge place like Rutherford Manour could pose a big challenge to Garrett. Luckily, his options aren't that limited. Since it's such a big castle, there's multiple ways of getting in. Either he could climb through the side and get through a window, light off the main brazier, which signals the cook to open the door to the barracks, or he could just take out everyone from the courtyard, lockpick the main door, and get in. Depending on his mood, Garrett can choose to get in whichever way he wants. But why not use that bit of information he just overheard and light off the main torch so he can get in more easily?
It's out. I hope that cook is as good as his word.
Well, after all, the easiest way in is the one you already know, right? But sometimes following the predicted path could leave Garrett out of some extra loot. Surely, some routes are better than others, like when he jumps straight to the objective rather than taking his time to explore and maybe find more items. That's the whole idea of Thief. Getting curious and finding new stuff all the time, because you can't possibly know what's in everyone's pockets. Now that Garrett found his way in, He needs to figure out a way to open the vault, so he searches around the castle, looting everything he could find of value. And as expected, most of the loot can be found in chests, but not always there's something of value in them. I think that's a fair point, because in a castle as big as this, with countless servants and henchmen, you wouldn't want your stuff to be stashed somewhere too obvious. So most people that really want to hide something would put a bit of effort in concealing them. Some items, especially the rare kind, are hidden in plain sight, while others are documented in notes and journals. At some point, Garrett starts to slowly uncover just how dysfunctional this family really is. From fighting cousins to murderous lovers, Garrett snoops around the castle and finds one special loot after the other until he finds Lady Elizabeth's chambers. The bride-to-be of Lord Ember seems to not share the same passion for him, but instead wreaks more havoc between the two cousins and even poisons one of their best friends.
Poisons. Better make sure I wash my hands when I get out of here.
Garrett has seen worse, so he treats this as an opportunity to steal even more. It almost seems as if Garrett is a direct karma response that affects everyone who's done anything unethical. Garrett sneaks into Lord Ember's room and finds a medallion that opens the vault, along with Ember's journal and a couple of other valuables. After shaving the entire castle of its jewelry, it was time for Garrett to make his way towards Heartless Perry, to which he can allegedly sell the opal. Garrett arrives at Perry's shop, where he finds him all beaten up.
Garrett, Taff, didn't expect to see you. Haven't you heard? Lady Elizabeth from Rutherford Castle is after you. She was in here with some goons.
Lady Elizabeth, accompanied by two of her thugs, roughed up Perry while looking for the bloodline opal. And out of fear, Perry told them Garrett was the one they should be looking for, which forces Garrett to go to the Stone Market Plaza and sell it to Black Market Bertha, a reputable fence who deals with jewelry. I'm still not sure how anyone could have figured all of this out in such a short period of time. By the time Garrett got out of the castle, Lady Elizabeth's goons had already beaten up Perry. Well, I guess Garrett does stop by at his apartment before taking the opal to the shop, so that could have been enough for her to notice, even if we're not taking into account the time to figure out that they thought Perry stole it. On his way towards Stone Market Plaza, Garrett encounters Lady Elizabeth and overhears her plan to get the opal back.
Did you see that fence wince? I only had to hit him 3 times before he started spilling his guts. Couldn't wait to give us Garrett's name.
It was my knife at his throat that made him talk, you taffer.
Heartless Perry, huh? He wasn't so tough. I want to go back and rough him up some more.
Luckily, Garrett catches up to it and manages to steal even more from her and move on. It's crazy because there's also the option to steal the bag of gold before she even arrives inside that small room, making the other thugs start a fight with her. She does die in the process, and I find it very ironic how someone who managed to outsmart everyone turned out dying by the sword of a common taffer. Once Garrett gets to Bertha, she's surprised by the opal's incredible quality and pays him a good price for it.
This is a damn fine opal. One of a kind. I bet it came from one of those old noble houses. Am I right? Never mind. It ain't my business how you came to have it.
Bertha then hands him a note from Artemis, asking Garrett to come and meet at Tercy's courtyard.
Gentleman left this letter for you. Don't you worry, I didn't read it. It ain't my business, is it?
Artemis is one of the keepers. In fact, he's one keeper who he respects and considers somewhat a friend, although it's quite uncommon for Garrett to have friends. But nonetheless, he did get trained by him in the first Thief game.
I don't like being followed. Cryptic notes, secret meetings. Haven't you keepers outgrown this stuff yet?
It was not our intention to be cryptic.
What was your intention? Don't I have friends on the Keeper Council anymore?
More than you know. Garrett, may I speak?
Sure. Talk.
The Keeper Council has agreed to allow you access to the prophecies as they are read by our interpreter, Keeper Kataka.
Well, that's Keeper talk for something bad has happened and now we want your help, right?
But there is something they require of you first.
Go on.
2 objects, one with the Hammerites, the other with the pagans. They are unusual. We wish to study them further. We need you to acquire them for us.
You mean steal them. Are you sure these are the only hoops your keeper friends need me to jump through before I'm allowed to hear the prophecies?
It's true that through this you will have proven that you are trustworthy. None of this is my choice.
I'll get you the trinkets. You just make sure your keeper buddies come through on their end of the bargain.
I will. Garrett? Garrett.
Garrett's discussion with Artemis puts him in a curious situation where he needs to steal 2 strange artifacts. We're not met with a lot of context up until this point of the story. All we know is that there's an interpreter called Keeper Katika who is able to tell us what lies ahead in the form of a prophecy. After the events of Thief the Metal Age, which is the second game in the series, there's a dialogue between Garrett and Artemis, which shows a somewhat traumatized Garrett.
Thou shalt inherit the earth.
All this? It was written?
All?
Victoria's death? And Karis? Was it written in your books?
All is as it was written.
And there's more?
Yes.
Tell me.
He couldn't believe that all the events were uncovered by this interpreter Katika through a very powerful prophecy. Garrett wanted more of that, so he agreed to help the Keepers with their artifacts in exchange for another chance at one of their prophecies. Now, the Keepers aren't any strangers to stealing or hiding in the shadows. In fact, these are the same people who taught Garrett probably most, if not all, of his skills. So, why don't they just go ahead and steal the artifacts themselves? Could it be ethics? Even if they don't steal the artifacts, they're still hiring someone else to do it, so there's no moral loophole around it. This almost feels like they don't really care that much about Garrett, or this could be Artemis's attempt at keeping the prophecy in a straight line, as Garrett had a direct implication in all of the previous ones. A more plausible reason is that the factions from which Garrett has to steal from are not quite that forgiving, and may retaliate if they figure out that the Keepers were involved. Even if the Keepers are supposed to be an underground society meant to preserve balance throughout the city, nobody really knows that much about them. I guess this is a great way for the Keepers to steer any attention away from themselves. There isn't any easy way to do this either. Garrett's objective is clear. He must steal the Jacknall's paw from the pagans and the Builder's Chalice from the Hammerites. There is no particular order for them as long as he brings both artifacts back. Since the Keepers work with Glyph magic, I'm pretty sure they'll be harnessing the power of these 2 artifacts to aid Katika in preaching their next prophecy. This makes a well-established objective for Garrett, since he curiously wants to hear the prophecy for himself. It's probably not even curiosity at this point. It's more about proving that it's actually true. This is why Garrett is such a beautifully written character. His determination to go as far as to steal for these people shows how dedicated he is to the truth. The Jacknall's paw is located in the pagan sanctuary, which is hidden somewhere underground. And while searching around the south quarter, Garrett finds a water well which leads deep down to the sanctuary. There's a lot of history and context between Garrett and the pagans. In both the Dark Project and the Metal Age, he found himself entangled between 2 friendly pagans, Victoria and Constantine.
You've brought me here to kill me?
But you have it all wrong, Mr. Garrett. Would it surprise you to know that it was I who hired you to steal my own sword? Yes. You see, Victoria and I are...
old associates.
Yes. You were being tested, do you understand? And I must say you more than live up to your reputation. You are quite an extraordinary thief.
Testing me? What is it you want from me, Constantine?
I am a collector, Mr. Garrett. But there are some items that are not available for purchase. They must be acquired using other means. In this case, the item in question would be best acquired by thieving. Not simple thieving. No. I need an artist like yourself.
Constantine turned out to be the Woodsy Lord, which is a demon that wanted to cease all technological progress and ends up spawning a cataclysmic event across the city. Victoria paired up with Garrett in the Metal Age to stop Chaos. Chaos was sitting at the opposite pole from the pagans, so instead of embracing Mother Nature, he tried destroying all organic life whilst also sharing a toxic obsession towards technology. Formerly a Hammerite, he made his own faction because his other Hammerite brothers wouldn't share his sociopathic tendencies. Victoria, on the other hand, pulled out Garrett's eye to feed it into a sentient artifact.
Bruises to singer him and antlers, and the woodsy lord binders them fleshes to stone.
Did you think those ancient phrases were mere words, man-fool? Look at me! I am the Woodsy Lord, the trickster of legend. If you be thirsty, flesh thing, drink of me. If you be hungry, then feed, for I am the honeymaker and the jumpsberry.
But Garrett later on substitutes his eye with a mechanical one, which was given to him by the Hammerites in the Dark Project. Now that we understand what's at stake, our thief needs to find his way towards whatever the Jacknall's paw has kept. This would prove very difficult since there's no map of the area, yet. Luckily, Garrett manages to steal a map, which speeds up his pursuit. The layout of this map manages to stand out in a weird way. I've always found it both confusing and uninviting to navigate through it. Garrett starts off in what seems to be a mine, or could be sewers, I'm not quite sure. Then he makes his way towards the larger sewers, ultimately arriving at the sanctuary's surface, where everything seems to be a mess. There's debris and rubble everywhere, old houses, decaying walls, and on top of all that, there's leaves and vines everywhere. Now, Garrett can rest assured that he's on the right path. There's not much lore to this place. We can speculate that it used to be a prosperous area, judging by the layout. There are a couple of manuscripts which talk about a number of uninvited pagans spreading their magic and roots everywhere, which probably led to the state of this place. It's safe to think that the pagans are the opposite of Hammerite. They are very in touch with nature. They use magic for almost everything. They have huge moss creatures and pray to a demon. Up until this day, they still idolize and pray for the Woodsy Lord, which we know from the Dark Project that he tried to destroy almost everyone that wasn't a pagan. Stealing from the pagans isn't as profitable as stealing from the Hammerites, or everyone else for that matter, since all their valuables are in the form of statues and old jewelry that don't necessarily stand out. There are some couple of special items though, but nowhere near as many as some of the Hammerites, or even some of the people from the town have. Whatever valuables there are left in the sanctuary, they're more likely leftovers from the people that used to live here. Garrett finds a note explaining that the only ones that can have access to the Jacknall's paw are the shamans. It's also said that they're the only ones that know how to perform the secret ritual. Anyone who attempts to take it without the ritual will simply die. It's not specified how it kills someone, but I think it's safe to assume they're using some sort of curse or poison, and the ritual is just a way to cleanse the item before it's being used. And as we already know, nothing can be kept hidden from Garrett. He conveniently found a ritual of the root, which explains exactly what someone needs to do in order to get a hold of the paw. As you might expect, it's not that complicated either. One water arrow, one moss arrow, and a little bit of blood. I guess the pagans aren't that famous for their ingenuities. Garrett finds the paw, which seems to be protected by magically enhanced branches. There are 3 symbols just below it, which symbolize water, blood, and moss. The ritual must be performed in the right order for the paw to be released. Not much is known about the Jacknall's paw, only that it's a mummified hand, probably belonging to one of the first sentients, said to be presumably created by the ancient keepers, or a prehistoric pagan, which was later on used for ritualistic purposes. Sentients are ancient objects which hold some degree of consciousness. We only know that there are 5 of them scattered across the city, and each of them have their own receptacle, which if brought together, serves the purpose of destroying all glyph magic. That's because in the world of Thief, everyone tampers with glyphs. Some factions are better than others at using them. That's why the Keepers created a contingency plan. In case of any disaster, it would disable all glyph magic. After robbing the pagans of their paw, Garrett turns his eye towards the Hammerites, which besides wealth are a bit more challenging to steal from.
So this is the Jacknall's paw. The Keepers will be happy, but I doubt the pagans will be as pleased.
In order for Garrett to know exactly where he's going, he needs some sort of direction. Usually a map is the best tool for spatial awareness. The map to St. Edgar's Church isn't found inside, but instead, this can be stolen from a thug that sits just in front of the cathedral's entrance and casually plots with his partner to go inside and rob the Hammerites.
You ready?
What, right now?
Yeah, you get the map, right? What else are we waiting for?
I don't know.
A little time to prepare, I guess. You don't just waltz into a Hammerite cathedral and run around willy-nilly.
But that's the beauty of it. Element of surprise.
Idiot. It's supposed to be the Hammerites that are surprised, not us.
Well, I mean, everyone would be surprised. Isn't that even better?
No, you and I. We shouldn't be surprised at all. We should be prepared, have a plan, know what we're going after and where it is, how many hammers will be around, that sort of thing.
Oh, yeah, I see your point. I guess. Are you sure you ain't just chicken? My last partner was chicken.
Look, we just got the map. Let's study it, come up with a plan. No one's chicken. We know there's gold in there, but we also know there's really big guys in there with giant hammers. This is what I like to call a finesse job.
Yeah, finesse. Sounds good.
While they keep going back and forth, Garrett seizes the opportunity to steal the map. He knows there's always loot to be had in the Hammerite area, especially if it's a cathedral. Garrett gets inside the church and steals his way from room to room, trying to find how to get to the Builder's Chalice. There's a lot to go by, and a lot of guards too, which doesn't make it easy for Garrett. He then stumbles across some notes that point him towards the factory, where he finds and puts together a pattern key in the form of a hammer, which he then uses alongside a gear to lower the cage where the chalice is kept. One particularly cryptic room is that of a Hammerite called Inspector Drept. Upon snooping through his stuff, he writes in his notes about a bent and aged woman with no further context. There's also a placard right above his desk saying, "Laurel, there shall be a reckoning." Up to this point in the story, all of this is complete nonsense. But it could mean something if we take into account some of the rumors that we've heard.
I saw a man dead in the street without his skin.
Come on, who'd take somebody's skin?
Garrett puts together the Hammerite symbol and the stamped gear, which lowers the cage, enabling him to steal the chalice. Compared to Jacknall's paw, there's a bit more backstory to the Builder's Chalice. It's said that the Builder's Chalice is one of the 5 sentient artifacts, and this particular one was used by Saint Edgard, a mighty warrior who drank straight from the chalice, empowering him and ultimately granting him victory in his battles. The chalice is a worshipped artifact amongst the Hammerites, most of the time giving up their own lives for its safety. Now that Garrett has both the Jacknall's paw and the Builder's Chalice, he's supposed to meet Artemis back at Tercy's courtyard. Artemis opens up a glyph and reveals a door that leads to the Keeper compound. These Keepers are using glyph magic to conceal the entire building, although it's only visible to those who know how to bind to the glyph magic. That's how they were able to hide in plain sight for all these years.
The repetition of these 3 glyphs, here and here. Now is the Termanus Embolian.
The times unwritten, the
Erbanus
end
Diem.
of words.
And here, again the mark of the Fratelli
Brethren and
Traderus.
betrayer.
Yes, warnings, terrible, unvesagen
My hand falls useless to my side, doubly cursed in living death.
The prophecies are clear. There is much ahead to be wary of. Interpreter Kataka, your words are most useful.
Clear as mud. Exactly what will happen, and what are we supposed to do about it? I'm still waiting to see a useful book.
We must first understand the unwritten times, if we are to prevent them.
First Keeper Orland demands immediate audience.
You've moved up in the world, Orland. Nice view.
Yes, I have. It's First Keeper Orland now, Garrett. Within these walls, you answer to me.
You called me here to remind me you're in charge? The job must not keep you very busy.
You inquired about books. Useful books.
That's right. You must have something in here worth reading.
You think you might shape events more skillfully? Read the signs more clearly? The prophecies.
Shape events? Interesting way to put it. I'm here now. Do you want my help or not?
Very well. This will admit you to certain areas of the library. Do not venture further. You will not ply your trade here, thief. If anything happens, you will be held accountable. Is this clear?
Perfectly. Perhaps you should translate for Katika.
Garrett was never a fan of the Keeper ideologies, nor a fan of their values. He doesn't respect their mission, and we see this throughout the Dark Project and the Metal Age pretty clearly. In Deadly Shadows, though, this is blatantly obvious, as Garrett is probably tired of their incompetence that blindly follows a half-understood prophecy. Clearly, the prophecy means something, but at this point in the story, everything is complete gibberish. The times unwritten, the end of words, and somewhere along the lines of brethren and betrayer, which was referenced in the Metal Age prophecy as well.
Destiny and danger are still focused on the one, the renegade who is both brethren and betrayer.
Well, you got the danger part right anyway.
The prophecy itself is referencing an event called the Dark Age, which could mean many things. This alone was enough to keep Garrett hooked onto the idea. He's now seeking 2 more artifacts: the Compendium of Reproach and the key to open it. The Compendium is a golden slab that will help Katika read the upcoming prophecy for the next potentially upcoming Dark Age. According to the Keepers, the Compendium, along with the key, have been missing for over a decade. Rafe, one of the Keepers, acknowledges that these items are very important and asks for assistance in his expedition to the Sunken Temple, where he suspects to find at least one of the items. Instead of receiving support, he's offered the cold shoulder, so he goes alone on his mission. Garrett recognizes that would be a good place to start, since there's some notes outlining Rafe's initial plan.
Well, if this guy thought the Glyph key was in this sunken citadel, I don't see why I shouldn't go look there. Sounds like it might be a profitable trip.
While roaming around the Keeper library, Garrett overhears a discussion between Keeper Draco and Nelson the Scribe, where he points out a potential lead for the Compendium.
Elder Draco, may I speak with you? I think I've found something in my studies. A connection.
Go on, and speak up, Scribe. I can barely hear you.
Well, everyone knows the Compendium of Reproach has been missing, and that last week I scribed a passage, and it read, "The Compendium will be borne by a terrible storm."
Yes, I remember the report. Interesting. Yet, no sign of any inclement weather, eh, Scribe?
No, but then, just a few days ago, a ship came into the docks area. Do you remember the report from Keeper Alcott? He said the ship had managed to get itself into port, though no one was left alive to man it. A plague ship. The crew, undead.
Yes, it is indeed a tragedy, and a mystery, but I see no connection. A storm would not cause the ship to befall such a fate.
No, but the name of the ship, Elder Draco. The name of the ship is the Abysmal Gale. Is that not another way of saying terrible storm? This is the connection of which I speak.
Ah, I see your point. And the error in your thinking. The Compendium was lost ages ago. How could it possibly be on a ship that has just come into port?
But...
Enough, Scribe. I have important business to attend to, in case you haven't heard. There's a dark age approaching.
Yes, Elder Draco. Thank you for speaking with me.
Maybe the Scribe is on to something. I should check out this ship, the Abysmal Gale, next time I visit the docks.
This yet again proves how much the Keepers care about their community. There's clearly an hierarchy issue at stake here. Why didn't the Keepers offer Rafe his expedition? Why didn't they look beyond what the Scribe told them? And most importantly, why didn't they offer any of these people any support? Garrett is soon to find out exactly where everything is heading once he gets on board the Abysmal Gale. Garrett then meets with Artemis, who tells him that the Hammerites and Pagans figured out it was him who stole the artifacts, and now they want his head.
Garrett, I have troubling news. The Hammerites and the Pagans have discovered it was you who stole their artifacts. Both factions are very angry. However, they are willing to overlook your recent crimes if you are willing to aid them by performing specific tasks. Until then, beware, for they will attack you on sight. A Hammerite named Inspector Drept wrote this missive for me to deliver to you. I contacted a pagan shaman named Diane, and she agreed to post a similar note for you on the outskirts of the pagan territory in the docks.
Unless he pays for his crimes? The crimes that they asked Garrett to do in the first place? They make it sound as if he did it out of his own interest. Now we have the answer as to why they didn't do it themselves. Instead, they had Garrett fall on their sword for it. In order to restore his reputation with both factions, Garrett needs to carry on tasks for each of them. The pagans require him to shoot moss arrows through designated shrines, while the Hammerites want him to kill undead and rustmites. Both of these actions will tip the balance on their good grace. In return, they won't attack him on sight. Throughout the Keeper compound, Garrett finds a lot of written information about the past and upcoming Dark Ages, his affairs with Victoria and the Woodsy Lord, and even a section about himself and his importance in their mission. Most of this information is kept in the Forbidden Library, where he should not have access to.
What is your opinion?
About the libraries? I think Orland is right to restrict Garrett's movements. These books are far too valuable to risk. Besides, there's nothing here in the Forbidden Libraries that a thief would want, unless the thief were the brethren and betrayer Arcadica seeks.
Then you do not believe.
What, the prophecies? I believe. I just don't believe it's Garrett to which they refer. Perhaps Orland is the one. Or one of us, perhaps. It seems logical it would be an elder. We alone possess the knowledge and skill.
Indeed. So you think it is folly to accept Garrett in our midst? His aid with the coming Dark Age will prove ineffective?
Of course. What can he do that we, all of us, cannot do?
I wish I were as sure as you, Elder Callow.
After being granted access to the Keeper Glyph, he gets to use it anywhere he sees it throughout the city, and even in small spaces like crypts.
Hello, Garrett. Orland informs me that you are to receive the Keeper Door Glyph. You must perform the scribe ritual to do so. Place your hands into the indentations on the plaque behind me. That is all.
This glyph will allow Garrett to open up secret passages and routes. Some of these glyphs even hide a couple of valuables. Because the entire city is in quarantine, Garrett can't traverse between districts, so he uses a glyph to open up a path between the South Quarter and the docks. Once he reaches the docks, he first climbs aboard the Abysmal Gale, where he begins his search for the Compendium of Reproach.
Sure are a lot of them.
What?
Zombies.
Yeah, they came from that ship, poor bastards. The Abysmal Gale.
And call me crazy, but coming through, ain't they a bit more riled up than normal?
They're just a bit on the testy side, you know? Grumpy 'cause they're wet.
Idiot. Wet or dry, zombies don't care.
Oh, like you're an expert. Anyway, don't worry. If one of them gets ya, I'll be happy to cut your leg off, or whatever it is you're supposed to do.
You taffer. You only cut off my leg if that's where one of them gets me. See? Otherwise, there's no point.
All right, don't get so mad. I'm just saying I'd help you out in a pinch, that's all.
Well, it makes me mad that I got to explain these things all the time.
Hey, how goes it?
Now shut it, will ya?
There's no map, no indication, and no information about anything. We just know there's zombies aboard, which are to be avoided or killed. We also know that on board of the Abysmal Gale, there should be the compendium, or at least some information about it, a lead of some sort. So Garrett searches left and right and finds the first mate's log notes, which report on some disturbing things. In the log, the first mate talks about Captain Moira's unusual behavior, which ultimately led to a mutiny. Upon further inspection, Garrett finds the captain's log, where it suddenly cuts at day 43. So something interrupted the captain. Maybe it was the mutiny, or something else? It doesn't add up. The mutiny only started after day 46, so the captain must have been okay on day 43. So that wasn't it. Something happened to the captain on day 43, which led to his unjustified behavior throughout the following days. All this information didn't help much, so Garrett goes down below and reads the ship's manifest, where they keep a record of all the items. Garrett finds out that Captain Moira isn't just a simple merchant. He's actually a pirate. In the manifest, the captain talks about a golden slab with a strange symbol, this item clearly fits the description of the Compendium of Reproach.
The object described in the manifest must be the compendium the keepers are looking for.
The captain has hidden the compendium back at his manor, which is on a remote higher ground, a bit further away from the city.
My stolen rowboat got me here in one piece. Now I just have to find and steal the compendium.
To get inside the seaside mansion, Garrett will have to sneak through the underground entrance, which is supposedly a secret escape route. Luckily, he finds an old elevator and reaches ground level, which is guarded by a couple of henchmen. The mansion is huge, and there's a lot of people roaming around. Captain Moira isn't around anymore, but there are still a lot of servants who take care of his wife. There's a lot of things that make this level stand out. The view of the city, the ambience, the loot, the interesting conversations. Unlike Rutherford Mansion, it has a more of a Victorian aesthetic, as opposed to the cold design of the Rutherfords, making it a bit more inviting. The people that created the level design for this mission really knew what they were doing. Everything simply makes sense, from the placement of the diary, to the direction of the light, and the overall layout of the place. This just screams beauty. They even managed to capture the depressing feeling of a person that just lost someone dear to them.
Did you hear that? Ginny? Ginny, come quick. I heard a sound, like a voice, carried on the wind. It was Robert, I'm sure of it. Don't tell me it was a trick of the wind. I know Bryant tells me you've left a message for me on the Victrola. Really, Robert, can't you just tell me yourself? That silly Victrola annoys me. Why must we have that ugly mechanist thing crouching in our bedroom? If your message is really so important, then you'll tell me yourself. At dinner. Yes, dinner. I'll have cook prepare all your favorites.
And that's exactly what happened. Edwina Moira lost her husband, Robert Moira, and she simply doesn't want to accept that he's dead. She's got a number of servants to her disposal, and they're not really doing that great of a job. Having so much wealth naturally attracts a lot of dishonest people. Setting the Rutherfords as a threshold example, I'd say there's a big difference between them, and this is reflected throughout the mansion. Robert and his wife are extremely devoted to each other. Robert knew that place would not be safe anymore if he falls, so he took extra precautions to ensure his wife will live her best life after he passes away.
Edwina, this is your Robert speaking, and I have some important things to say to you. First, though, you must send anyone away who might be attending you. Yes, even Ginny. I have left some things for you, safe in a secret room. The coin I have saved over the years, and an odd item I discovered recently. If I don't return from this next voyage, go to my study, where I have hidden a small switch. The switch will temporarily open a secret door in the North Gallery. Make good use of what you find there, and always remember that I am your devoted husband, Robert.
A secret room, eh? Always my favorite room in a house.
Why did Robert do all these things in advance for his wife? Well, he knew that at some point something could happen which would end his pirate endeavors. As we know from the ship's manifest, Robert noted that upon getting his hands on the compendium, he lost a couple of his men due to some traps that were protecting the artifact. In Garrett's encounter with the Moira family, it never showed Robert and his personality that well. We could only deduce that ourselves. The secret room and escape route clearly show that he does not trust just simply anyone. As far as I can think of, only Curtis, Ginny, and Edwina were the only ones that he trusted. But what about the ones he didn't trust? There's Standish, who doesn't shy away from expressing his hate towards the captain. There's a handful of servants who act above everyone else.
Much like the McCafferty soiree last season at their summer home.
Quite.
Yes.
Food was delicious.
Quite. Yes, quite. And on and on. Don't you two ever get tired of yourselves?
My,
Pleasant evening
what's
to
gotten
you.
into our Miss Varia?
Quite.
Yes.
But there's also a couple of clueless people who clearly aren't that aware of what's happening around them.
told him 1,000,000 times. Keep the door shut. Oh, there ain't no one in there. Not anyone to talk to. I ain't all that. Not all the time.
All these events have aligned perfectly, and Garrett finds the opportunity to walk around and almost freely take all of their loot. Garrett finds the secret room that hid the Compendium of Reproach, so he's done with that. Now he is left with only one moral dilemma. Either he steals a pouch that Robert left for his wife, which would deepen her already existing wound, or leave it where it is and move on, since he only needs the compendium. After his decision, he then proceeds to get away through the same passage he came from.
I've stolen the compendium, but I can't read it any more than Captain Moira could. I'll have to bring it back to the keepers. Besides, I want to see the look on their faces when I hand it over.
Garrett's job is not yet done. He still needs to find the key to open the compendium. Luckily, he already has a lead. In Rafe's journal notes, he underwent a personal expedition in the Sunken Temple, but he never came back. Since this was such a long time ago, it's safe to assume he's pretty much dead. Once he gets to the Sunken Temple located at the docks, Garrett recalls Rafe saying that the place is
swarming with strange creatures.
And he was right. The strange creatures are the Kershak, which are tall, scaly humanoids that inhabit the place. The other ones are the pagan giant rats.
Giant rats. Great.
These rats are creatures that belong to a realm called the Maw of Chaos, referenced in the Dark Project. Since the trickster was worshipped by the pagans, these giant rats seem to stick with them throughout the Citadel. However, they're only seen in the Sunken Temple and nowhere else throughout the game.
I be's fierce, not cause me coward. Getting us them Kershak eggs. Yumsy eggs be goodsy. Goodsy, yes, but be's you ready? There be's guards inside? Yes, Kershak guards eat them eggs. Yumsy eggs. Ready or not, here we bees go. Follows your noises, stompsy feet.
The pagans are here too, and they seem to be fighting over an artifact called the Kershak Crown. This crown belonged to Gruliak, a proud and arrogant Kershak king who thought he was above the Woodsy Lord, and as a result of that, the trickster banished the Kershak people to forever live underground, deep within the Citadel. This action alone led to the intellectual decline of the Kershak folk, which slowly brought them to their knees, rendering them incapable of reading and writing. Of course, this was the result of many centuries of isolation. The Kershak were once very advanced and favored by the trickster lord. Now their speech is no more different than that of a pagan.
Concern, he was headsick, believed in upside world. He spoke to me, told me there must be upside. Stories must be true. Else where did strangers come from? Do for brain fever you suffer from, just like him. Well, he is gone somewhere. Why not upside world? World is there.
Even the entire temple looks like it's holding on by a thread. Why do the pagans want to take the crown in the first place? Well, it was a gift from the Woodsy Lord, which was given to their favorite people, the Kershak. And Gruliak the king, though, never gave it back. He even lost his hand while trying to protect it, so ever since that day, the Kershak people are still guarding it with their lives. The only issue here is that Garrett has a thing for valuable stuff, and the crown is exactly something he'd go out of his way to steal, especially if it was an offering by his past nemesis. Upon following a red mark on the ground, Garrett finds the remains of Keeper Rafe and goes through his last words. A particular curious part is when he questions the Keeper's judgment. Why didn't they send anyone after him? Why didn't they help him in his expedition? All of these events aren't just a coincidence, so maybe there is a brother and then betrayer within the Keeper walls after all. Garrett grabs the compendium key and makes his way into the throne room, where there is a wonderful display of the crown.
Now that I've got the crown, what will they fight over?
After striping the Kershak of their pride and glory, Garrett makes his way back to the Keeper Library to unfold what the compendium lies ahead.
For this book to be
Silence. Kataka is about to begin.
This passage here speaks to us now. Very powerful. Savor temporalis nundame. Cor malus.
When the progress of time ceases, the one will be appointed.
No. Cor malus reportorta invisita bloom.
The evil ones will be pointed out for all to see.
When the progress of time ceases? What could it mean?
We must wait and watch. The meaning of the prophecy will become clear in time.
Wait, after I found your precious book? No. When time stops, the evil will be pointed out, or whatever she said. Don't you want to know what we're up against?
What would you do? Stop time with your bare hands? You cannot make the prophecies come to pass, thief. It is folly to think so.
You can't, but maybe I can. I could break into the clock tower in Stone Market, find some way to stop the clock from running.
Perhaps the Stone Market clock could be considered a symbol of time. But if you are suggesting sabotage, you would accomplish nothing, except further enraging the Hammerites.
With Kataka so close to discovering the Brethren and betrayer, Garrett.
I'm not going to sit around doing nothing. That's your job.
Fool! I forbid you to go to the clock tower or to interfere with the prophecy in any way.
You forget. I don't take orders from you.
He has left, First Keeper Orland.
Yes. I can see that.
Garrett may be a thief, but he makes a valid point. The Keeper's strategy is to sit down, lay back, and do nothing. What was the point of the prophecy anyway? Just the fact that you know about something in advance doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make things easier. Besides, Orland is always cornering Garrett. I think at this point it's kind of personal. This changes things, because he won't just stand idle and wait for the prophecy to unfold. Instead, he'll break into the Hammerite Clocktower and think of a way to jam the clock mechanism so that, quote, time stops, even if this means going against Orland's will. The Stone Market Clocktower is a huge construction that has 6 floors and 2 basements. This architectural mammoth is the largest and most prominent building in the city. Although not necessarily a place where wealth is abundant, the Clocktower holds Hammerite jewelry around each level, and the Hammerites that maintain the building seem to also live there full time. We can assume that's a requirement, as the mechanics of the Clocktower should always be under close observation. There's also priests and heavy guard duty throughout each sector. So maybe the clock tower is not just a display of time, but probably more of a home for the Hammerites. What I noticed is their design is prominent in all their estates, and they seem to take pride in that. The Hammerites are good at building automated mechanisms. Let's not forget that one of the craziest guys that Garrett had to deal with was Chalice, who made his own faction called the Mechanists. His idea was to offer wealthy citizens mechanist servants who would help them with their day-to-day tasks. At some point, Chalice had a plan, and he wanted ultimate destruction upon all organic beings. And it's clear he wasn't in his right mind, because he never really considered himself a true human. But it's not the mechanists who Garrett is worried about, it's the Hammerites. And having to wander around the giant clock tower in the pursuit to stop time itself isn't an easy task.
These machines could crush me flat. Better keep on my toes.
So he once again conveniently finds a map of the clock tower and makes his way down to the basement, where he tampers with the steam release and coal dispensers. He needs to overload the gear and put a brake to the halting mechanism, which in the end results in a sudden collapse of the tower.
Those noises mean bad news. Time may have stopped, but this is looking more destructive than I had planned. And while I made some profit, I didn't notice any prophecies being fulfilled. I would hate to admit the keepers were right after all. The best thing to do now is return to the library until the dust settles.
I guess there's a reason why so many hammers run different shifts on such a heavy-duty operation. This was not part of his plan, though. He just wanted to stop the clock from ticking. Instead, the entire tower collapsed, and now he somehow needs to show his face to the keepers again. This event didn't just trigger frustration, it actually fulfilled the prophecy, as the clock tower tip pointed directly at Orland's chambers, marking him the brother and then betrayer that was mentioned in the first prophecy.
Interpreter Katika.
Katika?
Keeper Orland. Katika is dead. Murdered. I went to bring her the copy of Moran she requested, but then her door was open. She never leaves it open. I looked in and...
Garrett has killed Interpreter Katika, you say? Seize him and bring him to the council room. This is the only murder in our ranks since these halls were founded by the first of our ancestors.
But Garrett had no reason to kill Katika. Has he not walked in line with the prophecies before?
Yet some say the prophecies point to him as brethren and betrayer. Surely he knew that the
Garrett killed Constantine. Yes, and Karis as well. His hands long...
A thief. And no stranger to murder is
not match the manner in which Katika was killed. How could Garrett have been the one?
Remember that we asked Garrett to join us, to share his knowledge and skill. But now we turn upon him without proof.
Broken and destroyed the clock tower. Petty vandalism.
Notice that the clock tower does appear that way from some angles. We must consider the implications. If that prophecy refers to one of...
The clock tower is irrelevant. The matter at hand is murder, done by one who we accepted as our guest and brother.
Proceedings are highly irregular.
I have heard enough! Garrett, have you anything to say before sentence is passed?
You haven't listened to anyone else yet, Orland. Why start now?
Silence! You are declared guilty of Interpreter Katika's murder. Your punishment will be determined by the council. Now remove him!
I regret to inform you that Garrett has escaped.
Very good. Call together the Keeper Enforcers. They will track him down and erase our problem.
Katika is much younger than she appears to be. The reason for this is because interpreting the prophecies has a huge magical pressure on a keeper, aging them as a result. It's also said that someone who studies glyph magic at that level naturally depletes their powers and even turns them blind. So they're left with only the knowledge and gift of interpretation, which is why we see Gamall as a direct aid and translator to Katika's prophecies. There is a high chance that Orland is the brethren and betrayer, but how will Garrett prove this? How will he figure it out? Clearly, he was set up. He just now has to prove it somehow. It was clear enough that during Garrett's trial, Orland was planning to execute him, even though there wasn't any evidence against him or a reason behind his actions. He still got sentenced to death twice, once at the trial, and the second time when he got the Keeper Enforcers after him. This really outlines Garrett's personality, as he didn't even try to counter any allegations. Instead, he went along and did his own thing. He's not going to fall on someone else's sword this time. Now that Garrett escaped his trial, he finds himself in the Old Quarter, which is one of the first districts to ever be built. This part of town is said to be constructed by the Hammerites themselves, and home to a couple of wandering pagans. This time, the Hammerites or pagans aren't Garrett's problem, at least not when the Keeper assassins are after him. The assassins aren't considered human anymore because of the excessive use of glyph magic. It's like creating the perfect weapon without the thought of any consequences, but they were once actual people. They were Keepers. This does not paint any good picture for them in any of the moral departments. I think we're starting to understand why Garrett dislikes these Keepers. Garrett's next hope is to see one of his fences, Ramian. He gets to his shop and finds him dead, along with a wandering note that tells him to go back to his own apartment in the South Quarter for more context. Upon arriving, Garrett is ambushed by Keeper assassins, but he deals with them quickly. You can say that at this point, Garrett is more than frustrated. I've always wondered, what if Garrett had such vast glyph knowledge that topped his other assets? It could be undoubtedly said that he would be unstoppable, but that would probably take away a lot of the fun from his expertise, which we know he enjoys. There's another note in his training room, which tells him to go to the graveyard in the Old Quarter. The helpful Keepers have left him a convenient shortcut route all the way to the graveyard.
I'm serious. I don't think this is right. Keepers. Taking a break from trying to kill me?
Not all Keepers believe you are guilty, Garrett.
But neither had we the evidence to alter the outcome of your trial.
The trial was a disgrace. Orland is not fit. He knows he must replace Kataka, so he plans to promote that child Gamall to the position of interpreter.
So you formed your own little club.
There are others, too. The Keeper hierarchy is in flux. We know Orland tried to frame you, but we cannot discern his motives.
That's easy. Orland is the brethren and betrayer, and he knew Kataka was onto him. He needed to kill her before she announced his name, and thought he could get rid of me at the same time.
That is only one of many possibilities, Garrett.
He has suppressed all inquiries into the Clocktower prophecy. Have you heard? From above, the rubble forms an arrow, and it points directly at the Keeper Library.
The evil one will be pointed to.
It is as if someone actively seeks to bring the Dark Age upon us. There is a corruption. Whenever the glyphs...
Keeper Artemis hasn't been seen since before the trial. He confided in me that he no longer knew who to trust. He acted strangely, so secretive.
But he was right. There is no way to know who to trust. The degree to which the glyphs...
Orland fears you still, and he will until the enforcers bring him your corpse.
He has used a binding glyph to seal every glyph door in the whole city. He is watching all of us. Until you are found, no one is allowed to enter or leave the compound.
We've been using Orland's own secret tunnel. It connects the compound to his office in the library. There's much danger, but it is the only way we can meet without being
Perhaps
overheard.
we can help you. The Keeper assassins won't have given up, and...
You've helped me already.
Why? What do you intend to do?
Find some proof that Orland is guilty. That shouldn't be too hard.
Oh, where do you think you will find this proof? Garrett?
This is exactly what Garrett was waiting for. Now, he's got the perfect opportunity to prove to everyone that Orland was the brethren and betrayer. Since the Keepers blocked the glyph magic that used to open secret passages, Garrett needs to find another way inside the Keeper library. There's an entrance that's not easy to reach, so he needs a pair of climbing gloves which he buys from the undercurrent shop at the docks. Once he's inside, he breaks into Orland's office where he finds a trap door that leads to the Keeper compound.
Orland's tunnel was right where I was told it would be. I haven't been in the Keeper compound since my trial. It's a sprawling complex right in the heart of the city, hidden by glyphs.
As soon as Garrett sets foot into the compound, he immediately realizes that this is not going to be a smooth run. There's Keepers everywhere, and they're on their guard. All he needs to do now is find some lead on Orland's involvement in this whole mess, while also trying to figure out where Artemis disappeared. Something tells me he's pretty close to figuring out what's going on. The council is gathering to vote upon their next course of action, and that is to decide if there is a need for someone to guard Kataka's chambers. Presumably if Garrett would want to make his way back there for any reason.
Fellow Keepers, many of us are called elsewhere this night, but for those that remain, I now bring this council to order. The question we consider first is whether access to Catika's chambers shall be proscribed. Shall we remove a guard from the Grand Hall and set him to guard the scene of Interpreter Catika's murder?
Garrett will no doubt seek to return to the scene of his crime. Let us place a guard, ensuring an end to his malice for once and all.
Their judgment is interesting, but also a bit flawed, because why would Garrett want to go back to the scene of his murder? Garrett can tip the balance in his favor and take out the torches on some of the council members, as the vote takes place by stepping forward with the torch on for a yes and off for a no. Depending on this outcome, there will be 2 guards near Catika's chambers, or there won't. Another issue is that to get to her chambers, Garrett must unlock the power of the Glyph doors again, since there's no other way to get to her room. Garrett thinks a good place to start is to snoop around Artemis's chambers.
This looks like Artemis's room. Maybe I can find out where he went.
Where he finds a keeper ring that can help him open other hidden passages within the compound. This makes things way more easy for Garrett, because now he can get to Orland's chambers via these secret doors. Orland's room is full of notes, but in one of his particular journal entries, he talks about a note that was handed to him after Catika's death, written in her handwriting. In the note, Orland expresses his shock, and then he gets instructed to kill Garrett. There's also a note that tells him to restrict Garrett's access to the Forbidden Library, as we've previously seen. Now, that's a bit odd, because Catica always considered Garrett important, as she encountered him in almost every prophecy. So why get rid of him now after he helped everyone acquire all these items? It doesn't quite add up. There is a red seal on the door glyph hanging on the wall, and in Orland's journal, he slipped in some instructions on how to remove the seal. The plan is to shoot it with a firehead arrow. That will drop the restriction and enable everyone to use it again. Garrett then makes his way towards Catika's chambers and uncovers something quite shocking.
Whoever did this knows a lot more about glyphs than most keepers. That's not good.
Catica wasn't poisoned or murdered in cold blood. Instead, she was stoned. Why would they think Garrett could have done that? He's no expert in glyph magic, and besides that, it would violate one of Garrett's main ideologies, which is not to kill. Up to this point in the story, his innocence is certain, but we know this already. Not only does he find her turned to stone, he also finds a note that's addressed directly to him.
No one is supposed to know I'm here. So who left me this note?
Garrett then makes his way to the Hall of Statues to confront the mysterious figure.
This is the place, all right. Why do I smell a rat?
Terminus animus, take the power, the glyphs, the bindings, live, walk, talk, and obey! Yes, my will, my desires. Terminus animus, awake! Garrett is here among you somewhere. Seek, fetch, find him out. Crush him till breathing stops. Cut him till bleeding stops. Do not let him escape. Yes. I must leave you my helpers, my minions, my stone warriors, and secret myself away. Yes, must keep secret, must stay hidden a little while longer. Oh, so many secrets.
Now, it's pretty clear that Orland wasn't the one who killed Catica after all, but who is this strange old lady? Throughout the game, there have been multiple foreshadowed references of a person called the Hag. Could this be her? Garrett needs to get to Inspector Drept, which can be found somewhere around Aldale.
I found more than I bargained for. A hideous old woman who makes statues walk, who is out for my blood and knows me by name. Orland doesn't seem to have a clue, so I don't think he's my man after all.
Aldale is considered the home of the rich people. Right out the bat, The whole district seems to be of higher value than even the Hammerite compounds. Aldale is also home to the Wieldstrom Museum, which attracts many thieves. Inspector Drept has made a stop here to hold up his investigations. Garrett thinks he is the right man to help him with his latest problem.
This place hath nothing of value for thee to steal.
I'm more interested in those papers of yours. If they can tell me anything about a crone that talks to statues.
Thou hast seen the hag?
Not just seen. She tried to kill me, but I hear you've been trailing her for years.
Yea, I hath followed her trail, but it hath not been clear. I hath even doubted anon that her crimes were more than my own imaginings. But that thou hast seen her as well. 'Twas in my boyhood, in the orphanage known as the Shalebridge Cradle, that I spied her. I didst play at a game with mine friend, and I was hidden, and my friend sought me. Then a hag, a bent and evil apparition, came from the darkness, near enough to touch, and my friend did scream. But I was a child, and afraid, and then 'twas over. The orphanage grew a dark and haunted place, and now none dare enter. When came I to mine manhood, and was saved by the order of the hammer, I sought the hag again. The hag wears death about her as a cloak. Some who meet her doth vanish, others perish with bloody work done upon their bodies. There are hints spoken of creatures made of stone, and ever the tale of a hag, a bent old woman, ever old, but growing no older, in a span that hath taken me from boyhood to mine own age.
Can you tell me how to find her?
She finds her prey now in Aldale, but 'twas in Shalebridge her murders didst begin. Seekest thou a start upon her trail there? 'Tis the only place I hath e'er spied her for certain, but I dare never return to that place.
That's a good place to start looking. I have no interest in being the latest in her string of murders.
In the east of the old town lies the Shalebridge Cradle, an orphanage that used to share its space with a mental asylum. That's an unusual combination, and now that I think of it, I wonder why they chose to combine these two. Was there not enough space for a proper separation? I guess for some sick reason, the people that ran the asylum thought it's more convenient that way. I wouldn't think so, but in any case, Garrett is here and he's absolutely terrified. And I don't blame him. This place is completely uninviting.
There's no telling what I'll find inside. I'm used to the dark, but this feels like a house with bad dreams.
The game designers have shown a ton of love for this mission. From its design and eeriness, down to the lore itself, Shalebridge Cradle is by far the most well-thought and outstandingly good level in the whole game. I think it's scarier than some of the modern cheap jump-scare horror games. This level is more of a psychological terror that can keep your mind racing even after you're done with it. That's the power of a great story that has a well-established context. But what happened to the place? What led to its current state? And most importantly, why did the hag choose to kill someone here out of all places? Maybe Garrett can figure something out. This was no ordinary mental asylum. There's a lot of notes scattered across the cradle, showing the cruel ways these patients were treated. Even though the place is haunted by the undead, it consists of other paranormal phenomena too. As Garrett enters the cradle, we are already met with an overwhelming dread. The place is bleak and foggy, strange and gruesome. It's a remnant of a long-gone afterthought, since the asylum was at the peak of its horrendous practices. Garrett makes a move and gets inside the cradle through a large basement door. While climbing to the ground level, his attention started to sharpen after hearing a consistent banging coming from the attic. Once inside, he finds the portrait of Gamall, the little keeper girl that used to translate for Katika.
She looks familiar. It's that keeper translator girl. But that can't be. This portrait must be as old as the building.
I can hear you breathing. Nobody here in the cradle does that anymore. How did you get in? My name is Laurel. Something changed when you saw my picture. That's why you can hear me now. I want to leave here, but I can't. The cradle won't let any of us go. Will you help me?
It in fact belongs to the spirit of a girl named Laurel, who asks Garrett to help her escape the cradle. The whole place seems to have its own consciousness. It's more of an entity that manifests a desire for vengeance from the result of several years of suffering and mayhem. But does it know Garrett? Does it sense that Laurel is trying to escape? Laurel explains to Garrett that in order for the cradle to let someone go, he needs to erase all trace of their existence. So in her case, he needs to destroy her journal, clear her blood from the floor, and burn her nightgown. But paradoxically, some of these items aren't from this current timeline. Some of them were destroyed and some were not, but instead got stuck somewhere in time. This is where the real challenge comes, and it would prove to be one of the most difficult and bizarre tasks Garrett ever had to do. With Laurel's guidance, Garrett makes his way into each place, grabs the item and destroys it.
That's the cage where they used to put the new patients until a cell opened up. You should stay out of there, or the cradle might see you and try to keep you here forever.
But her journal is not on this plane of existence anymore, because the cradle claimed it for itself. So, to trigger a throwback from a time long gone, he must take one of the items from the patients and place it in a spot where it originally was, tricking the cradle into thinking it's from a past timeline.
You did it! My nightgown's gone. But the cradle remembers more than I thought. You can't get it all here. You have to go into the past, into the cradle's memories. It's the only way. You'll have to pretend to be one of the patients, so the cradle won't see you. Each of the patients from Whitehall had a favorite toy that they liked. You can use them as keys to go into the cradle's memories. Find one of those toys, and I'll tell you what to do next.
The only rule while doing this is that Garrett doesn't need to be caught by one of the staff members, which will bring him back into the present. He can have another go at it, up to 9 total times. 9 times for each patient from the asylum.
They let him use those to work in the shock therapy room. The toy you just picked up is a key to the cradle's memories. Now you have to figure out where to bring it. There's a special place for each toy. When you put the toy in the right place, you'll enter the past. It worked! You're in the past now. This is what everything looks like, the way the cradle remembers it. It's like a stitch in time. You can't die here because you're inside a patient. But if the staff catch you, they'll take away your toy, and you'll have to find another one.
While reading some of the notes, it was clear that these patients were treated worse than animals, and some even lobotomized and disposed of in the morgue. It's already a strange thing to have a morgue in an asylum, let alone share the same air with an orphanage. Within the cradle's corridors, there's a number of puppets which are controlled by the cradle itself. This poses some inconvenience for Garrett while roaming around and trying to find each item. Puppets in this context are simply restless patients that wander throughout the asylum, desperately searching for a way out.
My diary is gone. Good. The cradle can barely remember me anymore. But it can still see the bloodstain in the attic. You'll need to clean it up in the past, where it's always fresh. Sometimes when the staff took patients to a treatment room, they wouldn't ever come back. They used something called dissolution serum to clean up afterward. Get it, and then use it on my bloodstain in the attic, where I saw you the first time.
While getting back to the past and burning Laurel's journal, Garrett carries on and slowly disposes of everything else that might have the cradle remember her.
You did it! The cradle can't remember me anymore. We can leave now. Meet me in the lobby. I'll show you the way out.
Now, the only thing left is for Garrett to get out of this place. Even if it didn't unveil much about the hag, it surely made him eager to go back home.
Oh no, you can't leave, can you? I know why. This place remembers you now. You've been here too long. There's only one way to leave the cradle. You have to trick it. I'll help you.
While trying to escape, the cradle trapped Garrett inside, and will only let him go if he offs himself. Garrett now needs to go back to the basement level and trap himself into a cage, which will trigger his reappearance in the past.
Yes, that's it. You're really here in the past. This is a different time, just before the end. You look like yourself now, and the cradle can see you. If the staff find you, they'll kill you.
Now that he's back to a time when the cradle remembers him, he has to go all the way up into the staff room and jump from the highest point of the building. This will trick the cradle into thinking that Garrett is now dead, and finally entangling his soul from the asylum.
I finally managed to escape from that place, but I think I'm out of my depth here.
Although Garrett made it out, Laurel's ghost still haunts him and beckons him to follow her down to the Ironwood crypts, where the hag buried her remains in a secret room.
We're almost there. I'll show you where she buried me.
Let the Book of Names record that on this day did Translator Gamall take the name of Interpreter Gamall and begin to read the prophecies. Let her eyes open to read and to see. Let her tongue speak the words of the glyphs.
I shall see the unseen. I shall speak the truth.
Interpreter Gamall, what's wrong?
Oh, look. No.
Curse her stinking, rotting bones. You think you can snare me, trap me with your secrets. I am secret, kept for decades. You scratch out glyphs and think you have them, but I wear them, drink them, breathe them, know them far better than you. I am glyphs now and for all time.
I'm me again. She can't use it anymore.
Finally, now you see me, my skin, my bone as I am. You will not live to thwart me. I have gathered all I need. Talismans, tomes, artifacts, writings. I have them beyond your grasp. I trace, I discover, I read, and soon I shall come to the last of all glyphs that you seek, stumble, follow, but shall never find. I'm afraid we're going to have to rip a few pages from the Book of Names.
Nobody knows exactly how old Gamall is, but it's speculated she's at least 100 years old. I guess this is what the Order of the Keepers are up against, an abomination that flays her victims and leaves a carcass of bones behind. This is what happened to Captain Moira, to the little kid from the book, to Laurel, and who knows how many others. In the cutscene, it shows a hulking mass as if it's made from several corpses. This is pretty bad because, as of now, Garrett doesn't exactly know what happened.
Gamall did this. Looks like we've got a new target for those assassins.
Yes, but unfortunately the enforcers are quite ineffectual against her.
So what are you gonna do?
She's found the final glyph.
Final glyph?
The last of all glyphs. It's a very powerful weapon. She will undoubtedly
Activate it, and in doing so, wreak untold suffering, and also ensure her complete invulnerability for all time.
Keeper Orland, the treasures are gone. Gamall has taken the chalice and the paw.
Gone? The artifacts? Then it was Gamall who wanted them, not Katika. You see, I received these notes that I thought that they were from Katika until they kept coming, even after she was dead.
It appears we have made things easy for Gamall. But what does she intend to do with the artifacts?
There is no way to know, except she must have a hidden lair, some place where she has taken our missing books.
You could find it, Garrett. A thief could find it.
Her lair? Yeah, I have an idea where it might be.
Then you must go. Go now and kill her.
If only you could find a way to destroy the final glyph. Make sure it can never be activated.
Let me see if I've got this right. You want me to find Gamall's lair, learn what she wants your treasures for, kill her, and find and destroy this final glyph? Anything else?
How dare you act so high and mighty?
Enough speeches, Orland. You've already had your turn.
Yet, there is truth in his words. A sequence of events was started when you stole the chalice and the paw. The glyphs did warn us.
Right. Glyphs. As if I could forget.
At this point, what hasn't Garrett done? Once again, he needs to steal the Jacknall's paw and the Builder's Chalice. Gamall's lair is hidden somewhere in Aldale, and it won't be something that's going to stand out in plain sight. By snooping around, Garrett finds a way to lower the water level from under the bridge and makes his way through a tunnel and into Gamall's lair. Her lair is huge. I'm not sure how could such a massive place get hidden in plain sight like that for so many years. But yet again, the Keepers conceal their compound too, using glyph magic. I would assume Gamall does the same, since we know that she is way more skilled than any other Keeper. At a first glance, we can tell that Gamall is a big fan of statues and books. She has an impressive collection of manuscripts, some of them stolen, some of them written by herself, but overall, a lot to go through. She seems to be plotting to bring down the Keepers for a very long time, and interestingly enough, only now she outtakes a direct implication into the final prophecy. I wonder how many times she actively stepped in and altered the prophecies, so that it somehow changed its course, like what happened in the Dark Project in the Metal Age. What if she somehow tried to shift some of the focus from the main threat? I guess we'll never know for sure, as the implications of the other two Thief games were more focused on things that were completely foreshadowing the entirety of Gamall's plans.
How many times am I going to steal this thing?
Surely enough, Garrett seals the two artifacts again and heads towards the library to find some lead on her whereabouts.
I thought I told you I don't like being followed.
Our separate paths have converged, Garrett. We both seek the same thing.
I suppose if you were working for Gamall, you would have tried to kill me just now.
Tried? I would have succeeded. Look around us, Garrett. This is Gamall's secret library. Here she has been lurking, plotting, and for much longer than just one lifetime. She has used the glyphs to extend her life. And there's more.
You've been reading, Artemis.
Yes, we are fortunate. In these books, Gamall has documented her plans carefully, but the meaning of that map is not yet clear to me.
Chalice, crown. These things are marked with the names of the artifacts.
These books, some have been missing for months, some maybe years. She does not say what the final glyph does, only that she will become undefeatable once she... The Aldale Plaza, the South Quarter Fountain.
Well, now we know what to do with the artifacts once we have them. They fit into those landmarks somehow.
She has been gaining knowledge, while our ignorance grew.
Do the books say where she is now?
The remaining treasures, they are at the museum. She hopes to gather them all at once.
And when she has them, she'll activate this, the last of all glyphs.
No. The books are very clear on that. She intends to destroy it. When she has all the treasures, she'll have the power to do just that. The last glyph is the only thing she fears. Well, that, and you, my friend.
Destroy it? But that's what Orland and the others told me to do. Half-truths from the Keepers, why am I not surprised?
For the Council to still employ subterfuge, with all that's at stake. I will go to Orland myself and get the truth from him. You should
go to the museum and steal the remaining artifacts before Gamall gets to them.
Then let us meet back at Stone Market Plaza. And Garrett, if you come face to face with Gamall, you must understand. With her power over glyphs, she is all but indestructible.
Right, I'll keep that in mind. Artemis?
So, is the other way around? The final glyph doesn't need to be destroyed. It needs to be activated, and to do that, we need all the 5 sentient artifacts in their designated receptacles that are scattered in each quarter of the city. But in order to do that, he first needs to acquire all 5 of the artifacts. He already has 2. For the rest, he needs to break into the Wieldstrom Museum and steal them. This won't be easy, as the museum advertises as thief-proof. And no living man has ever succeeded in stealing anything from there and getting back alive. At least, not up until this point. The eye, the Kershaw crown, the Jacknall's paw, the Builder's chalice, and the heart are all sentient items that Garrett needs to acquire in order to activate the final glyph. In one of her notes, the hag talks about the eye, which is a reference from the Dark Project. I guess, based on this, we can tell that she's been spying on the Order of the Keepers for a very long time, since she knows the artifact was powered using Garrett's very own eye. To make things even more challenging, Garrett needs to break into a well-guarded museum, full of electric traps and high security.
Well, of course they died, Amanda, old girl. The 2 of them didn't have half a brain between them.
Exactly my point, Zachary. The mother, now she had a brain and a plan. Women often do. The whole thing was her idea. Trouble is, they were too pea-brained to pull it off. Snuffed out by some security device, of course. But after they were already inside the museum.
Well, if you're game, I am too. Should be an absolute bundle of fun. I can't wait to outwit a guard. I do hope there'll be guards. But we should do it soon, before the city watch discover that tunnel we found.
So he makes his way through the underground tunnel that was conveniently dug by one of the previous thieves that apparently didn't make it. We notice from a note that's left right next to the underground entrance. I think it's safe to say that the Wieldstrom Museum has the largest amount of jewelry and paintings, which Karen nonchalantly steals. I've always wondered, where does all that loot go? He doesn't have a backpack, and besides that, judging by the volume of his stash, he should be wandering around with a large bag over his shoulder. Once again, the designers have done an amazing job at sneaking in some of the references from the previous series, like this throwback from one of Karras's famous speeches. That's quite interesting because the Victrola is a mechanist invention, according to Edwina.
That silly Victrola annoys me. Why must we have that ugly mechanist thing crouching in our bedroom?
This is what excellent story writing and level design brings to the table. A masterpiece full of reference and nuance that makes exploration very much worth it. I have yet to see anything random in such a linear game. It's almost as a form of farewell from the people that worked very hard at putting everything together, since they're referencing a lot of parts from the other 2 Thief games.
I don't know. Why?
not asking for a raise already, are you?
I wish. No, I think I have something to report.
Was Wilson sleeping again? Let him nap. Nothing ever...
No, it's not that. It's those electric securities. Did you know that if they get wet, they...
Oh, that. And you want to tell Curator Milton? Don't be a chump. The Curator's real proud of the security. So they got a little tiny weakness. They worked well enough on them two fellas a while back. You'll get fired for even mentioning it.
Oh, well, I don't want to get fired.
That's right, you don't. So keep your mouth shut and you'll do fine.
The museum is funded and led by Curator Milton, who seemed to be pretty feared by his employees. Almost all the items of high value are secured by an electrical plasma. One way to get around it is to shoot a water arrow at one of the poles. The other way is to completely turn off the power, but it seems like way too much work, and as we know, Garrett likes to move around unnoticed. His best course of action is to shoot the poles, get the item, and move on. Although, one particular item is hidden under a platform in the main hall. The lever to release the statue holding the eye is located in Curator Milton's office. I found this a bit odd. Maybe the Curator knows what power the artifact holds. Or maybe the artifact itself draws some sort of spell that made him take some extra precautions. Nevertheless, Garrett gets drawn to it, and the eye does speak to him throughout his whole remaining adventure.
Got him. Easy. Well, not exactly easy, but I was expecting more interference from Gamall.
You miss your eye, little man. I've seen many interesting things with it. Someday I might come looking for the other one.
This has to be the only sentient artifact that ever speaks to Garrett, and it does so because they have a bit of a history together. Strangely enough, there wasn't any sign of Gamall, which is a good thing, but altogether begs the question, where is she now? What is she plotting? Hopefully not something worse than getting a hold of these artifacts.
Artemis, what are you doing here?
I have figured it all out, Garrett. The artifacts. Give them to me. I will show you all the answers.
What do you mean, give them to you? Did you find Orland? What's wrong with you?
Artemis and Garrett, I'm glad that I caught up with you. You were right, Artemis. I have lost my balance. Your words kept at me, nagging, even after you had gone. It was the Glyphs. Their draw has been too powerful to us. Once we used them to be keepers of the city, but now what do we keep safe? An empty box, a book of blank pages.
You speak nonsense, Orland.
No, you were right. I've been refusing to see. The Clocktower. I thought it pointed to me, but it meant all of us. Finally, I understand why the Glyph prophecies can no longer see into the future.
Return to the library, Orland. Now is not the time.
The Glyphs have become our keepers. We can no longer use them to protect our interests. We must tell Garrett the truth. Garrett, what we told you. You are the one who must use the artifacts, that much is true. But you are not to destroy the final Glyph. No, you must...
Yes. Thinking too clever, but still one step behind. Your keeper Artemis, convenient to use his form to take the artifacts from you. His life, mine. Mine now. And yours. There. No! But no use hiding. 1,000 eyes I have to spy after you. No use running, fleeing. 1,000 legs at my bidding. I will prevail. I have lived years, decades, centuries. I will live forever.
I'm not surprised that Artemis got snatched by the hag. He was too old and too rusty. Artemis was wise and one of Garrett's friends. He taught him how to conceal himself, and he was always the one who never gave up on Garrett. Even in the Dark Project and Metal Age, Artemis was the one to bring him back to his main path so that he can align with the prophecies. Now that his purpose has been fulfilled, it was time for him to go and become one of Gamall's latest victims. Tough way to go. Garrett's final mission has been revealed. He needs to place each and every one of the 5 sentient artifacts into their designated receptacles. The Warwick Heart in Aldale.
1 down, 4 to go.
The Builder's Chalice in Ironwood Graveyard.
That's 2 of them, but I still have 3 of these artifacts to position.
The Kershaw Crown in Stone Market proper.
So far, so
You're
good.
weakening.
Now there's only 2 artifacts left to place.
The Jacknall's Paw at the docks.
4 of the 5 are all set. I can't stop now.
And last but not least, the Eye in the South Quarter Broken Fountain.
Now for the last artifact, the Eye. Let's hope this final glyph does something useful.
Yes?
If I never see another glyph again, it'll be too soon.
Back with you. Old. Oh, so old. All ruined.
Did you see that? Never noticed it before. How could a building just...
goblins at the very stroke of midnight.
Does that look like gold to you there? Hurry, before someone else...
Someone at the window.
They've all gone. What will we do? What will become of the city without us?
Returned his chalice to us! Them Jacknall's paw, it becomes he back to us.
That's not for you.
Please, sir, I'm hungry.
You have talent. It's no easy thing to see a keeper. Especially one who does not wish to be seen.
The final scene is magical, because it's exactly what Garrett was told when Artemis caught him pickpocketing in the Dark Project.
To see a keeper is not an easy thing, especially one who does not wish to be seen.
Which is something that could symbolize perpetuity, possibly leaving room for a new adventure, and who knows, what else could lie ahead for Garrett. I think in order to understand the creative process of Thief Deadly Shadows, we need to dive into a deeper analysis of its core elements. From its level design and attention to detail, I feel like there's a lot of value that's been added since its predecessors. Thief is set in a dark and mysterious universe, and while its actions seem to take place only during the night, This element really sets it aside from other video games from the early 2000s. There weren't that many stealth games with an emphasis on this layer. In fact, I can't really think of any other games in the early 2000s that did what thiefdeadlyshadows was doing. At least, not in the stealth genre. With levels like Shalebridge Cradle and Overlook Mansion, it would be really challenging for other developer studios to promote a game that heavily relies on a complex mechanic such as stealth. I wouldn't say it's inherently difficult to create a stealth game per se, but it's difficult to create an immersive experience for such a large mass of people. When we talk about immersion, we usually collide with the idea of escape, a haven that keeps us glued to a video game that doesn't feel gamey at all. Instead, it makes us intrigued and curious. It makes us empathize with a character and make our own decision in tough situations. And Thief manages to capture all that. Deadly Shadows isn't an RPG game with choices and quests. It doesn't require us to level up and grind for gear and perks. It doesn't actually have a progressive system at all. Its organic gameplay is said to make your life easier or not, depending on your style of gameplay. Thief Deadly Shadows was never about fast-paced gameplay and taking out dozens of enemies at once. Sure, you can still do that if you want, but you would miss out on its atmosphere and critical thinking patterns, which add value to the gameplay that makes a one-of-a-kind experience. Thief was primarily designed to arm you with the right tools so you can make means to an end. Guards blocking an entrance, shoot a noise arrow, or throw a crate in the opposite direction to make them have a look.
Uh-oh. Funny sound. Really very odd. Okay, I hear ya.
Blazing torches that light up a hallway, you can take that out with a war arrow. Maybe there's a stubborn cook or busy lady that just won't let you steal in peace.
Hello?
Take her out with your blackjack, or maybe your gas arrow, or throw an oil flash on the ground and let them slide into the water. No matter which way you feel like tackling an obstacle, you'll get to the same objective. It's more about how you decide to get along with it, as some situations may require a different approach. Maybe you're on the Abysmal Gale and you need to arm yourself with flash bombs and holy water. Or maybe you're in the Pagan Sanctuary and you feel the need to lay down some explosive mines to free up the area. There's loads of variety, and while Thief may be linear, its problem-solving requirements don't feel linear at all. Thief is not perfect. It has its own shares of glitches and bugs, but it never felt like it broke any immersion for me. Apart from the chaos from some of the later stages of the game, it really felt like you're a lone wolf who really tried to survive in a world full of people with strong beliefs. There are some questionable gameplay design choices, such as the removal of the rope arrow. They did substitute this with the climbing gloves that allow Garrett to climb on certain types of walls, which serve as an advantage in levels like Overlook Mansion. Apart from the Wieldstrom Museum and the Keeper Council levels, the usage of these gloves is completely optional. But, as well as some of the other tools from Garrett's arsenal, they bring a bit more variety and open up new opportunities to find extra treasures and sneak past guards. I feel like it would have been even better if they introduced the climbing gloves early on in the game, as it would have been interesting to try out in stages like Rutherford Mansion and St. Edgar's Church. How Garrett uses these tools is completely up to his own style, but you can also get very far without any of them. Level design is one of the most crucial segments in Thief. It can either set us on a smooth journey that cruises our gameplay, or it can turn into a frustrating experience with little to no indication of where we need to go next. There's a difference between hand-holding and wandering around for minutes after we figure out what we need to do. Luckily, the level designers from Ironstorm made an excellent job at creating a believable environment. From Garrett's apartment to the Keeper library, everything is precisely placed and shows no random interference with any objects, notes, and even character placements. In modern games, and even in other stealth games, we often see generic elements that are present only to make up space that don't add value to anything other than filling a room. A great example of good level design is when Garrett finds a note in his landlord's apartment where it says he stashed a bag of coins somewhere around South Quarter, or a thug that tries to impersonate Garrett to get a hold of some extra bucks. These are just minuscule examples, but the game is full of these kinds of situations. Everything around makes logical sense, as you won't find a hammer in the music room or a chicken breast in the coal pressure chamber, unless it has some explanation from an overheard conversation or possibly a note. Item placement is not just finding somewhere to fit a helmet or a crown. It has some context, and it's done so organically as if there is a solid reason why it lies there in the first place. In Rutherford Manour, there is a helmet in one of the chests from Lady Elizabeth's chambers. At first, that could seem random, but if we take a closer look, we'll find out that she stole it from one of the guards to stir things up between them. And Garrett only interacts with Lady Elizabeth after he's done with the Rutherford job, and we already know that she's dangerous and cunning. This is the result of proper level design that doesn't make it obvious for the player on what lies ahead of him. The game doesn't prepare us beforehand. Garrett doesn't know anything apart from the fact that somewhere in the castle there's a valuable opal. Everything else that he discovers is through immersive level design and environmental storytelling. There's countless examples and I could go on forever, but I feel the best way to understand and experience this is throughout actual gameplay. One of the best examples of excellent atmosphere design is the Abysmal Gale level. When Garrett sets foot on the ship, he doesn't know what he's up against. All he's got are his skills. If we pay attention throughout the game, there's people that talk about what could be aboard the ship.
Sure are a lot of them. What? Zombies.
But let's say we don't pay attention and we were to blindly go there and check it out. We would undoubtedly find ourselves stuck on a ship full of zombies that won't die unless you throw a flash bomb or holy water at them. But this is not my point. My point is that the game doesn't need to tell you if a level is dangerous or not. It doesn't need to pop up a notification or go through a cutscene to let you know what danger's ahead. Instead, it's told through its environmental aspects. Nobody needs to tell you that the Shalebridge Cradle is haunted, or that the pagans are dangerous and insane. And that's miles more effective than getting a screen prompt or a cutscene. This is one of those scenarios where doing less actually does more and gives the player the opportunity to let his feelings dictate the next course of actions. Nobody can pretend that visuals aren't important too. Having a visually impressive game can add to its immersion and overall feel, and while thiefdeadlyshadows is almost 2 decades old, it still holds up in terms of graphics. Thief's dynamic lighting really stole the crown because without this part it would have been difficult to showcase a convincing atmosphere, given the overall premise of the game. Not many games handle shadows like Thief did, even if it was built on the Unreal Engine 2. If someone would start playing thiefdeadlyshadows for the first time today, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't have any issue looking at it. And we all know that some of these modern graphics have come a long way. Thanks to the talented modders out there, Thief received an entire overhaul with high-resolution texture packs and bug fixes. It's incredible how people from all around the world gather to help each other better enjoy such an old game. Most of these mods are not always about graphics. Some of them fix a bunch of stubborn glitches. For example, when I decided to play it again a while ago, I bought it from Steam, installed it, and started playing, but I couldn't get too far. The 4:3 aspect ratio didn't bother me at all, because I wanted to retain the original experience. But when I reached my first lockpick encounter, I got stuck and nothing could be done to pass that point. Did some casual googling and it turns out there's something wrong with the refresh rate and its FPS. I never really got to the bottom of it, as everything I tried still didn't fix the issue. Luckily, the modding community put together Thief Sneaky Upgrade, which fixed all these issues. I really can't thank them enough for conveniently adding these fixes so we can all enjoy Thief as it should be. But aside from the brilliant community that put together all these perks, I think it's time to highlight the most important element that brought together this entire series.
Soaking it twice a day in ox blood, which stings like an angry patch of nettles, I'll tell you that. And a strict diet of kidney pies and soured milks.
And the bad humors in your gut?
The wife rubs my head with barley mash and no weekly baths, which causes an excess of humors about the house, Doc says.
All that and still not improved?
Well, looks worse, but it doesn't hurt no more, which could be a good sign.
Bathing causes excess humors, eh?
Doc says lots of ailments could be avoided altogether if only we didn't bathe so frequent like.
I'll wager that whole arm has to come off before Tuesday. Mark my words.
There's a big portion of the game containing sudden dialogues. Some could unveil crucial information while others can give small hints that serve as a teaser for the player. Usually, these hints are carried out in the form of a note. But let's be serious, who documents their entire life through a journal or some random notes? Some conversations happen spontaneously, and Garrett happens to be there to overhear them. The voice acting is done in such a way that it captures the reality of the situation. It's almost as if the story is told by itself throughout casual gameplay without forcing the player to do anything other than pay attention. This forms a deeper connection with the player, which makes him take into account certain environmental phases. One important layer of any stealth game is the ability to slide unnoticed while outsmarting your opponents. Either if it's controlling the line of sight or hiding in the shadows, there's many ways to conceal yourself. But what happens when you get caught? Do you stand your ground and start fighting? Or do you try to run away? What about not getting caught in the first place? Most stealth games rely on visual cues to let you know when they spot you. Some of them are pretty obnoxious too, like in Thief 2014 when it breaks any immersion left by hovering icons on top of guards. Thief Deadly Shadows, on the other hand, does something different. Not sure if you want to enter the next room? Maybe you hear some footsteps that indicate a guard passing by. Sometimes you can even hear someone snoring, which could mean it's safe to go about with your business. What if there's a Hammerite praying? Then you know you don't have to be that careful because he may be facing the other side. All these elements add up and make logical sense just as you would do in real life. You wouldn't be able to see through walls and get notifications and arrows on your screen pointing towards where the next sword swing hits you. Not only does this break the immersion, but it makes you lean on something that you know it will keep on happening. So why would you be more careful when you can easily depend on a visual cue that shows you exactly where you're being seen from? What's wrong with paying attention to what's in front of you? It almost feels like too many of these modern games spoon-feed everything to the player and leaves no room for any imagination and critical thinking. This is why audio lies at the pinnacle of every Thief game, as it really stands out from any other game in general. From the quality itself to the actual dialogues, we're left with an eerie feeling every time Garrett sets foot on any grounds. With all this said, what makes Thief Deadly Shadows such a great game? Well, that's probably an objective question. But in my opinion, what truly makes it great is the consistency and dedication it's received from its talented staff members. Down to the developers and all the way to the voice actors, I would say Thief has more to offer than just a way to satisfy a progression compulsion. It has a rich and consistent story, it fully makes use of its audio engine and level design. It gets us lost and on edge from time to time. But most of all, it gives us satisfaction when we conquer an entire level all by ourselves. And to bring us in the shoes of the most famous thief in the world, it's really something that can stick with us throughout our entire lives. Thank you for watching.